Down means lower.
Okay, folks, we're going to get started here in about 2 minutes, okay? Wherever. They can see where they want to.
Well, we can exit so we don't disturb them.
You're right, okay.
You know I call
No, y'all are welcome to stay for our bill. No, they need to stay for our
Bev,
bill. They may want to hear
Bev.
this charter bill.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna invite
Well,
them.
they're invited to stay.
Thank you.
Some of them have meetings.
But I'm
We had to
saying
go
they
to
may wanna hear
Washington.
Yeah, we'll let them know. There's a couple of the committee meetings.
Thanks a lot.
So I think they
that. Tell them
have.
they want to stay and hear this charter.
Yeah.
I saw you. Well, I talked. I told Jeff, I said, I think, she said, we ain't my one place. You want to watch it? You don't take this yeah.
Friend. Hey, Senator.
Is such a bright, basically,
How many of y'all got in this school?
she discovered in rules that when the draft legislation basically saying that state board can be completely
I'm serious with that. We got 7 pieces.
duly call me.
Already.
They can make a decision. In other words, how all boards have to make their own decisions.
We're not going to vote on it. Just go here today. We'll talk
Possibly make the substitution It might be
Friend, recognize the nurses and tell them we took care
I'm going
of
to.
that. Until we took care of that in the budget.
Yeah.
On the study commission.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you take your seats. Before we get started, first of all, I'd like to recognize all of our nurses out here in the audience. If you haven't figured out, they're the ones in the white coats. And I hope you all will know that going forward, the nurses are going to be working in the schools. We're going to have more of them. We're going to provide more funds going forward. That's one of the things that's come out of the Education Commission. So we're very glad to have you all here today. Thank you so much. We're going to try to do this expeditiously. As many of you know, we are not in session tomorrow. And so today what we thought we'd do, we've done this in the past. We do like to invite outside guests. Next week we're going to have the metro area superintendents here to hear from their perspective what they consider problems and opportunities. We had to limit it to a degree. Pretty well went around the donut between Cobb, Gwinnett, Clayton, DeKalb, and Fulton, as well as City of Atlanta. I think they're all going to try to be here, except for City of Atlanta, where a deputy's going to probably come because Dr. Davis is out of town. But that should be interesting. We'll do this again next week. We will probably have another joint hearing. For those of you who've been in the past, it's not often get back together. That was myself and Chairman Coleman. And so we think it's very good to have these kind of discussions for all the members in the House and the Senate. Today we're pleased to have Dr. Dollinger from the Georgia Partnership, which is the education arm, if you will, of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. They've done this where they come up with the top 10 issues to watch each and every year for how many years, Steve? For 8 years. I believe the author of most of these articles is sitting next to you, if I'm correct. So if you have any fault with the facts, statistics, arguments, etc., don't blame me, and don't blame Brooks, and don't blame Steve. Thank you so much. So, Steve, does everybody have a copy of here in the committee of these? Does everybody have one of these?
Oh, yeah, I do.
That would be the patriotic red, white, and blue? Oh, okay. We need one more down here.
Everybody have one?
Okay. Steve, in the interest of time, we're going to get started, and the mic is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Appreciate the opportunity to be here again. This is, he said, our 8th edition of the Top 10 Issues to Watch. And then we just rolled this out last Friday at our annual media symposium, where we have about 30 reporters from across the state. We'd like to be able to be a resource for them, since our organization, as the chair said, we're birthed by the Georgia Chamber and the Georgia Economic Development Association to be that nonpartisan, non-biased, research-focused education issues. So the reporters realizing that, then we're oftentimes a resource for them throughout the year. And you've probably seen in your own communities there have been articles in Gainesville and Augusta, and Monday, AJC, Maureen Downey had the lead editorial talking about some of the speakers. In fact, Chairman Coleman was there along with Stacey Abrams talking about this upcoming legislative session, and a lot of other speakers the reporters like to hear from, like the state superintendent, the commissioner for early care and learning, the governor's policy staff, Herb Garrett from the School Superintendents Association, and others. Let me walk you through this just real quickly. The way we put this together every year, and Chairman Miller mentioned that Dr. Dana Rickman is the author of this document. A lot of work goes into this. She pulls together a stakeholder group early in the season and talk about some issues that are coming up and try to look at both sides of that. Then as we put this together, these of course are not the only 10 issues, and they're not prioritized, but they're some of the big issues. What I would suggest you do is just real quickly turn to what we call the pipeline. Let me see real quickly. Page 34. This is what we call the Birth to Work pipeline. A lot of organizations are using this now to depict our challenge in education. As a former superintendent, I realize that K-12 is an important part of that pipeline, but there's a lot more to it. And we have to look at not just the pipeline, but metrics along that to see how we're doing. And then when I talk to chambers and other groups across the state, we talk about how can they be the insulation around that pipeline to analyze the data, see where their community is strong and where they're weak and what they can do to improve. Well, when I mentioned the metrics, keep this pipeline visual in your mind if you would. Turn back to the beginning on pages 2 and 3. Last year we began looking at not just the 10 issues, but 10 indicators that we could use to see how Georgia's doing with this pipeline. And it was tough to get this down to 10. A lot of our partners across the state would say, well, Steve, you ought to put this other part in or that part. There are a lot of important metrics, but just focus a little bit, particularly for leaders like yourselves across the state. What 10 things can we look at? Well, what we also tried to do then was to compare Georgia, since unfortunately on some indicators we're not doing well. How would we be doing if we were in the top 20? What is the 20th state that we could benchmark with, and then how are we doing? Well, as you look through these, you can see we've taken the pipeline from low birth weight babies, a lot of research about how important that is, to children ages 3 to 5 enrolled in early education. That one, in fact, has gone up, and you can see that we are doing better than the 20th state in some categories. You can see with the 4th grade reading, we use NAEP, 3rd grade, reading on grade level by 3rd grade, you know, is such an important benchmark. And we had finally caught the national average for students basic and above in reading. So there have been some gains over the years. You know, just last few weeks, Quality Count said that Georgia actually is ranked 7th with some of our policy issues, and thank you for that kind of hard work over the last decade. Our challenge is that most states are doing pretty well there, and our real challenge is that Virginia and Texas and North Carolina, some of the states we benchmark with, have been doing that for longer than a decade, and they're not waiting for us to catch up. So while we're poised to do a lot better, there's still a whole lot of work for us to do. Some of these are interrelated. These are not 10 separate and discrete pieces. That's why it's so challenging with the work you're doing. If you just look down these quickly, I just mentioned how good are our schools. You know we're doing better over time. NAEP over the last several years, every other year we're getting better. Graduation rate's getting better, and regardless if we come out with a new calculation soon, you can look over time and see we're doing better. Quality teachers, still the most important thing we have to focus on. With Race to the Top efforts, you know that we have 26 states have committed to work on, counties have committed to work on that, and at least 10 others have volunteered to participate. So that's going to continue to be a piece for us to improve that teacher and leader evaluation piece. Common Core is rolling out. Several of us were just in Washington 2 weeks ago with U.S. Department of Education, and 12 states are on Race to the Top. We all took teams there. We're focusing on our individual state challenges, but what we're doing well in Georgia, again, is looked upon as one of the leaders with Tennessee and a few of those other 12 states. If we're going to raise up achievement in Georgia, we're going to have to raise up rural Georgia. There's a real push now nationally, and when we've got to come back and focus on more in Georgia, is how can we help those poor school systems across our state. When I was superintendent of Fulton County, of course, now with resources being depleted, we still were capable, particularly with staff and internal resources, to be ahead. But some of our colleagues across the state are challenged, and with the cuts in the budget, they're even more challenged. So what can we do to help all of Georgia? If we're really going to improve our state and look at these metrics, how can we improve all of those areas? You keep looking down. We talk about the new normal with funding. Unfortunately, it's a bad normal. I know you're grappling with that. We've got the Funding Commission. That's kind of a stay tuned. Some pieces coming out already that may help that a little bit. Pre-K is such an important area for us along that pipeline. Commissioner Cagle, I give him he's doing. Unfortunately, he didn't get that federal grant, but that did give him an opportunity to focus on the issues that we need to improve in Georgia, including a quality rating system. So he's going to go ahead and move that forward, and we're glad to be able to work with him and partner in that effort. Choice, we tee up the issues here. That's a big one I know today you're wrestling with. Since we're nonpartisan, we don't take a side there, but we kind of talk about the issues so folks can realize it's not just a conversation about choice, it's a conversation about local control and funding. It's very complicated, and I hope you can bring some sense to that. The pipeline, we've talked about that and the role of all of our leaders. Interesting to step back and take a look at this whole piece of ethics. We know that, unfortunately, Atlanta Public Schools in Daugherty County were kind of like the poster child for that for us, the cheating issues in Georgia. But as you read this number 9, you'll be reminded that there are a lot of other states that have similar issues. So what can we do as leaders that we can help build those cultures in school districts where we can hold them accountable, push for better performance, higher standards, but not get into those unethical behaviors. And of course, it's not just education. We realize that in the banking industry, corporate industry, a lot of places that struggle with these kind of issues, and they're the minority of the employees in those organizations, like they are in these school systems, but unfortunately the few that mess up are the ones that gather the headlines. But I would really draw your attention to that last one. It wasn't intentional we put it there, but it's kind of like the glue that holds all this together, and we call it, where is the glue? There are so many pieces that are coming together for us now in Georgia. We have the Alliance of Education agency heads. Several of those members are new. They're focusing their work. The School Board Association and the Superintendent's Association worked on their visioning project, a leading project of that kind across the country, helping to focus there. And I tip my hat to my colleagues there who got into that K-12 work and realized that the pipeline starts earlier, and they created a separate committee then to look at early learning. So we're looking at that whole piece now in Georgia. The Complete College America, which we're focused on Complete College Georgia, run out of the governor's office. That's focused on that more of that end of the pipeline. How to get more kids out of high school than on to some other education when we know that 80% of the jobs in the next decade will take at least a 2-year education. And the governor just rolled out his competitiveness initiative. The Georgia Chamber has been carrying the flag for that. They just rolled out yesterday evening under the 6 different categories of that competitive initiative. There's areas like innovation and technology and transportation, but of course one of them is education and workforce development. It's interesting to see what they're posting as strategies and activities and things to be working on in the future. If we can work, we coming together as partners, and that's part of the work of my organization, is to convene groups, get people to focus, show them the sweet spot where we all can come together. We really have an opportunity to continue our improvements in Georgia and perhaps even leap over some of those other states that have been ahead of us for a while. But we have to be focused. We don't have time or resources for random acts. But there'll never be enough money and resources. So how can we be thoughtful and deliberate and make sure we're aligned and we can raise up all of Georgia and really improve what we're all about, and that's improving this birth-to-work pipeline. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to bring this to your attention. The partnership loves to be a resource for you. It's not just this document. We're in many of your cities and counties with our economics of education work. We just finished some good work in Forsyth County benchmarking off national school systems with their change in demographics. More kids in poverty, they're concerned, their chamber president and superintendent are concerned they're going to lose their brand, that they're number one, and they don't want it to happen. So we're helping them continue with their journey. We're venturing into Emmanuel County, Marietta City, helping these school systems and chambers and people come together and focus on these birth-to-work pipeline issues. This spring, again, like every other year, we'll be going across Georgia to do kind of an Education 101 for anyone running for office. We partner with the School Board Association, since a lot of the people who come to those meetings are school board candidates running for election or re-election. So as you hear that being advertised, we'd ask your support for mayor, city council, even just community leaders, that they would come to those sessions. There are about a dozen of them across the state, so they can learn more about these education policies and the research behind them, that they can focus their platform as they're running for office. And I know many of you have been on our annual bus trip across Georgia, where we then highlight these best practices. We've got the answers right here in Georgia. There are a lot of schools that are really doing well. Part of our bus trip every year are also charter schools, because they're innovative and doing creative things. Representative Carter has been with us now, and she's even bringing her class from Lowndes High School that are future teachers. And that gives them an idea of different schools across the state and what's going on there. And now, actually, it kind of raises the conversation level on our buses when these young kids are asking good questions about teacher practices. So I'll stop. I know you're short on time, sir, but be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, y'all. Let's not be shy. That was a dumb question. I'm sorry, Representative Morgan. What was I thinking?
Welcome, Steve. Thanks for being here. And as everyone knows, I'm a huge fan of the partnership. Just curious, are you guys looking at the Race to the Top work and doing any analysis thus far on how it's being rolled out?
Yes, last year, in fact, we had a section here on Race to the Top. But since that's becoming so embedded in our work, we didn't have a separate piece on that. But we're looking at the teacher quality piece. In fact, that meeting I just mentioned that we went to in D.C. last week, a big focus on that was the teacher and principal evaluations and that piece. We're doing really well with the student information system. Bob Swigum at DOE's, big kudos to him. He finally is getting that in place for us. So we're talking about that. We're looking at that. So we've positioned some of those here. And when we do each of these sections, you look through, you'll see that each section has a part called issue overview. So we cast the big picture and kind of look nationally. What's the significance for Georgia? So we get into that piece. And then it's action steps for Georgia. What can we do to be really tactical there? So yes, ma'am, we are focusing on that. And another, having you say hello reminds me that another piece that we would like to bring to your attention that the partnership offers is our Education Policy Fellows Program. And we have an alum here from the class. It's a national organization run out of Washington, but about 12 or 15 states have a policy program. It's kind of like Leadership Georgia. It meets once a month for a year, but it focuses just on education policy. We have business leaders, government, community leaders, education leaders who are in that class for a year. So if you'd be interested in that, watch that advertisement this spring to kick off next fall also.
Representative Ash.
Thank you very much. Pre-K.
Yes.
The action steps talk about the dilemma of how are we going to fund pre-K going forward.
Yes.
The collision that's about to happen between Hope and pre-K. Are there any ideas about other funding mechanisms for a pre-K early childhood program?
There are, Representative Ash, and there are some examples across the country. Commissioner Cagle has invited the partnership and some other organizations into a conversation about that so that we can see, and it could include both private and corporate funders as well. But he's being creative, and like I said, having gone through that process for that grant, at least he's got his strategic focus now, and we're glad to be able to help him.
Thanks.
Miriam, who's on 7? Like you. Oh, Senator James. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And welcome, Mr. Dollinger. we worked together for a long time when you were the Fulton County Superintendent of Schools, and I know your love for the children and your priority is for excellence in education. But you gave us 10 issues to watch, and I wanted to know, I know they aren't prioritized, but what do you think are the major 3?
Wow, it's a tough one. They're intertwined, so I would put that in that kind of a fashion. As we work with the Common Core, that gets into STEM issues. That also gets us into issues of rural Georgia, rolling that out. Do they have the best teachers? Do they have the professional development necessary? Sometimes that STEM piece of virtual schools can help that kind of a situation. That gets tied into the funding. If the money's not there, the training won't be there, the rollout won't be there. But I think the piece that will help that is the conversations that you have and other community leaders across the state. As we focus on the Governor's Competitiveness Initiative, the Visioning Project, there's some good material there. If we can look at that, we can find some best practices. It was interesting, the conversation with some of our superintendents that were with us in Washington. As we were focusing on this, it's the issue of the challenging budget and lack of professional development and the QBE has never been fully funded, those kind of conversations. But we get back to, okay, so what? And that's what our organization likes to get to. So what can we do about this? And the superintendents were talking about how can we be more efficient in the operating side of our house, that we could maybe put some money into the classroom. So they were pushing on us a little bit, since we have the relationship with the business community, to get business community members to go into school systems and help them with those processes of transportation, warehouse, maintenance, HR, that they might be able to save a few bucks and put those back in the classroom. So it's those kinds of ideas that can come out of the good conversation, and that's what we encourage you to continue to do.
Okay, and one last thing, if the chairman would not mind, and that is that I know that we have a new law that we will have, the 9th graders will have to have a career path. So I don't see anything that truly addresses that, but I've gotten more letters and concerns from school boards saying that we should not do that, and I just want, or they can't afford to do that.
Let's back up a bit. What they have to have is an individual graduation plan. That could be college and or career readiness. So it's not just a career thing. It's college and or career. The graduation plan is what the requirement is for each student.
We addressed that in somewhat in that pipeline section. In fact, in our economics of education, we've been doing those presentations across the state since in the last edition, and then when we update it again in the next year, we're talking more about that end of the pipeline. So how do you get more students through the pipeline and ready for work or college, which is interesting because now that can build well on the governor's new Go Build Georgia piece. So it's an important piece. As far as how that's implemented, that's still the issue. I think the career academies are a good partial answer to that. But to have students start thinking about careers, it's had a little deja vu for me. A few decades ago, when I was a high school principal back in Fairfax, Virginia, we had back then called a vocational wing on our building where students from other parts of the county would come into the school for that. It's amazing even way back then how that would trigger ideas for kids of what they may want to do in their career path. And even if not that, they could take some of those classes as electives and make more money in college if they're having a part-time job with heat and air conditioning they would flipping a burger somewhere.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, Senator, for that requirement is the fact we're trying to get to these kids in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, because they technically drop out in 9th grade, but they really drop out mentally 7th and 8th grade, so that's one of the reasons for it. Senator Albers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Dollinger, great to see you as always, and I want to echo everybody's comments. What you have done for our state and each one of our communities has been extraordinary, so thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
I've got a two-part question. We talked about funding. Do you have any updated numbers that show what our per-student funding is as it relates to other states? And then the second part of that question is where do they fall in dollar-wise? Because much has been said of what we invest and what we get in return, and I want to make sure we have those dollars going to the right place and where they're vetting out.
I don't have them handy. The ones that come to mind are the ones I read in the paper this morning. I don't know if those are accurate or not.
Probably not.
But we could certainly.
You're questioning the veracity of the AJC here?
Absolutely
Hope
not.
Nancy's not in the room here, wherever you are.
Absolutely not, sir. But we could get those numbers for you.
Thank you.
Be glad to.
Okay. Senator Crane, are you one? You number one?
I am number one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
We always welcome every new senator with that he's number one for a day.
Well, thank you for recognizing that. I appreciate that, and thank you, Doctor. You mentioned Fairfax. I first went to elementary school in Mount Vernon.
Oh, did you really?
So not far away, I imagine.
No,
so
and my wife went to Fort Hunt High School, and you guys were big competitors in that area of the county.
Yeah, well, my dad took me elsewhere soon after, but that's interesting. It's a small world. When I look at the metrics you use to evaluate student performance and educational system performance, one metric I don't see, curious if you look at, is the relationship of family structure and student performance.
We do, and when we go into the communities to do this community strategic planning, we call it, we use a lot of the kids count data. The Georgia Family Connection Partnership is the host organization for that Annie Casey Foundation data in Georgia, and we do a lot of that kind of data and put that out. I would encourage you, if you've not looked at that data for your county, that you go online to FC Family Connection Partnership in Georgia, GAFCP, and you can click on your county and pull up that data, and it's a lot of information from low birth weight, healthiness of families, and so on. The only disadvantage of that data, sometimes it's a little old. We'd like to have more fresh data, but it's still a set of data that would be interesting for you to take a look at.
Yeah, I see. It's interesting to talk about the birth rate of a child, but it's what's the home environment?
Yes, exactly.
And how does that relate to performance, and is there a direct corollary?
Well, there really are. Single parents, family income, those are really important pieces.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, thank you very much, as always, for being here. And again, I do know it's important if you also look at the makeup of Steve's board. We've got some very influential business partners on that board, and your work is greatly appreciated, what you all do.
Much. And go to our website and call us if we can help you. Thank you.
I'm going to give you a brief update on the Education Funding Commission, which Chairman Coleman and I have been involved with, a lot of people in this room. And we're going to probably introduce about 6 or 7 pieces of legislation this session, dealing with things like the nurse situation we talked about, equalization, capital outlay, cleanup of Title 20. So look for those. These should be coming forward probably within the next couple of weeks as we try to update, if you will, the QBE funding formula. Obviously, we have to work within the economic environment we find ourselves. But I think so far I really commend the effort of the Commission. People have worked very, very hard in this area. We've had a lot of participation, too, particularly from the local school systems, the superintendents, and even parents. So, again, that's very much appreciated. Yeah. Brooks reminds me we have 26 subcommittee meetings, and he and I have been at most of them. So the good news is we didn't have to chair those ones. We are going to, today, I'm going to conduct the Senate business, which I think we can dispense of fairly quickly, and then we're going to turn the room over for the House Education Committee, which has a pretty critical bill on the agenda, which may be one reason why a lot of people are here. First of all, though, in the Senate, we've got some new members to our Education Committee. Senator Mike Crane, number 1. Is Senator Miriam Pierce here? Mary Pierce here, number 2. At least I'll make you number 1. You sit in front of me. Okay. And let's see. And Senator John Wilkinson down here. And we appreciate you all being here. Welcome to the Education Committee. We have a new set of rules because we have to amend our quorum. We have to increase it to the number of 8 from 7 to hold a meeting. And so I will entertain a motion. So moved by Senator Albers, second by Senator James. All in favor? Any opposition? Do pass. Okay. Because we've got all the House members here, I want to let them know where exactly what's happening with the bills, as well as the Senate members. We've got some bills to be assigned to subcommittees. And for you in the audience, I'm going to call these out. I'll give you the number and where the bill is going to be assigned to, and a little explanation of it. The first one, from Senator Rogers, requires local units of administration to adopt policies which explain professional development plans and the impact of the plan on a certified professional's retention, evaluation, and rights in the process. This is SB 153. It'll go to academic achievement. Next one is from Senator Henson, SR 480, which urges local boards to adopt policies to only stock vending machines with healthy options. That goes to academic support. Senator Mullis, a resolution urging the DOE to implement CPR classes in public schools. That's sort of near and dear to my heart. Academic support. Again, Senator Rogers, SR 663, support reading for learning merit-based programs, academic achievement. And we've got a couple of bills that will be assigned at the next meeting. Representative Nix, yours, and a resolution from me as well. So we'll assign it next meeting. We also had a lot of bills, mostly House member bills, that were reassigned to this committee, came back from Rules. And what we'd like to do, I'm going to have to do these one at a time, and I want to send them back to Rules so they'll be eligible. I'm not requiring the members to come testify. We've already been through this. It's more formality to send it on through the process to expedite some things. And it also allows to get some legislation on the floor of the chambers. The first one, and I'm going to have to ask for a motion in a second, and then we'll do a vote on each one of these. I've got about 6 or 7 of them. It's from Senator Albers. It raises the age of mandatory attendance and eligibility for literacy from 16 to 16 and a half. It passed by committee. Do I have a motion to send it forward? Senator Ligon? Okay, second from Senator Ligon. All in favor? I'm sorry? Sure.
I know that several people introduced similar legislation, and some was introduced before that. So I see now that you've merged all of them into this one bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What was the criteria in picking one over another?
We picked 16 and a half over 17 or 18 because of the least fiscal impact at this point. Okay?
Well, mine did the same thing.
It costs less to go to 16 and a half than it does 17 and then 18, accordingly. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposition? Okay, next bill, Senate Bill 227, Senator Loudermilk. Allows a home study program to submit a declaration of intent to utilize a home study program and all attendance records to the DOE and for online submission. This passed the committee, went to Rules, and do I have a motion to send it back? Senator Albers, second. Second, Senator Ligon. All in favor? Any opposition? Motion passes. House bills. Just woke up the back row. Representative Benton's bill from the 31st. Fiscal responsibility with this bill. Sending statements of attendance by first-class mail instead of registered mail. HB 39. Passed by committee substitute. Do I have a motion? Senator Albers. Do I have a second? Senator Ligon. All in favor? Any opposition? Yes, sir. It was for kids that we had to send it. We had to send them certified mail, and from the cost standpoint, and then we get to position it after a number of times. Then it would have to go certified before any disciplinary action was taken. We worked out an accommodation on that. Okay. I'm trying to do non-controversial ones. Next one. Representative Maxwell, HB 130, Career and Technical Education Advisory Commission to meet at least once per year. And it was more than that, I believe. That's what we reduced it down to, right? I think it was 4 times a year something we're doing. Yeah, that's right. So we gave it another year. Okay. Need a motion from a senator? Second. All in favor? Good try, Representative Maxwell. Yeah. This is one we may have to look at again. This is from Representative Coleman of the 97th. Expungement of records. Allow for records to be destroyed. My God, we're going to actually get rid of some paperwork here. This passed by committee. I need a motion. That's your cue, Senator Albers. Senator Ligon? Okay. All in favor? Any opposition? Motion passes. Okay. Next one from Representative Casas. This was the Online Clearinghouse Act, allowing for systems to share online-based courses with other schools. This is really, really important with this digital learning. And it really is a good way to save monies. It's been done in other states. This was a great bill by Representative Casas. With that being said, do I have a motion? Senator Albers. Second, Senator James. All in favor? Any opposition? Okay. Goes forward. Two more. Representative Golick of the 34th, waiver of scholarship requirements for the special needs scholarship under certain conditions. Additionally, reduce the total amount of each scholarship to the local 5 mil share, austerity, or any other state-mandated mid-year reductions that occur. This bill was brought by Senator Golick because we have a requirement that in order to get a special needs scholarship, you be in public school. It was deemed that some young people are so medically fragile they never can be in school. It's very narrowly drawn, and what it does, it's got to have a doctor's sign-off in order for this to be implemented. And that was, we worked it out to make it very narrowly drawn, but that's the reason for it, for these kids that cannot attend school in any way, shape, or form. So, do I have a motion? Senator Albers. Senator Ligon for second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? We're on a roll. The last one, Senator Rogers' bill on expanding the special needs scholarship program. It was tabled, so it came back. I really don't want to get into debate on this. It'll go back to rules if we pass it out. We narrowed this bill substantially from where it originally started. So if I have a motion, a second. Senator Ligon. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Thank you. Okay, a couple of things, too. Some bills that we've got pending. We're waiting fiscal notes. Senator Jack Hill filed a bill about providing state funding for pre-K programs in the same manner as kindergarten programs. Senator Rogers has a bill dealing with online learning, where each student would take at least one online course, and also provide for the end-of-course assessments to be administered online by 2014-15. And Senator James has a bill that changes the month for determining the eligibility for participation in educational programs for the elementary and secondary ed from September 1 to December 1. And these are all waiting fiscal notes. And we've got other bills that are still in the subcommittees that have been held over. And we will be having subcommittee meetings next week starting at Tuesday. Our time frame is 4 o'clock. And our subcommittee chairs will be putting notices out. You all are all on the distribution list. If you're not, if you would let Donna know over here, Donna Neely, if you're not, if you want to be on the distribution list for the subcommittee meetings, keep in mind, we do most of the work in the subcommittees. And the reason being, that's where we have all the testimony done by people of interest. So when we get to the committee meeting, the only questions really going to be asked from the members. So if you've got a position on a particular bill, you have to attend the subcommittee meetings. I just can't emphasize that enough. And because we are the upper house, we are now adjourned.
Let me on behalf of the House, we will be discussing 2 bills you'll be receiving within 2 weeks. One is the Title 20 elimination. You may want to stay and hear this. And the one we're going to be discussing to probably about an hour is going to be the one on the charter amendment for charter schools, the constitutional. All right, the meeting will now come to order. If everyone would please take a seat. If you have any conversations, please take them to the hall. We'd appreciate it. Would everyone please join us in a word of prayer before we get started, please. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, how thankful we are once again that we, the people of this great state, have the opportunity to come together with the elected officials to talk, to discuss, and to deliberate on legislation that will have far-reaching implications on the boys and girls of this state. We ask that you be with this group as we talk today, as we deliberate, as we discuss. Please, dear God, let us have cool minds, Help our hearts to be warm and accepting, and give us the wisdom to make the right decisions, ask the right questions, and do the right thing. We're thankful for the people here today to give their input. We ask you to bless us, lead with us, guide us, and direct us. And dear God, always keep us in thy mind and take care of us. We ask these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay. Okay, so we're ready to go. So we have two bills we're going to be talking about today. The first bill we're going to talk about today, if you would, and I want to say to we want to send out an apology to you. There was a little error. We put a bill number and the description of the bill was wrong early on. Got some people fired up. They came to me and said, "We're doing a tax bill." No, sir, we're not. That was another bill, so we're not doing that one. So we did send out a correction, and I appreciate it and appreciate your understanding. Before we start, is there anybody out there that has never been to a meeting before other than the nurses? We've recognized the nurses over and over. Raise your hand. Skip, you've been here 1,000 times.
We've got a guest for a graduate of Gwinnett County School System.
All right.
Dakota Rice, who will be attending Brown University
All right.
this fall. Not a single major, but a triple major.
Fantastic. Is he going to teach it? Going in to teach it?
He wants to be an attorney.
Oh, no, you got to teach for 5 years first. We're glad to have you here, though. Thank you. Stand up and let us see you. We're proud of you. Hey. Son, tell us what your majors are. Stand up and tell us what your majors are. We want to hear this.
I want a triple major in political science with a focus in political theory, economics, and physics philosophy.
Oh, fantastic. Now, where'd you go to high school?
Gwinnett School of Math, Science, and Technology.
Charter school, right. I want to ask you a question. What did you think of that charter school?
I absolutely love it.
Why did you like it so much? Stand up. Why did you like it so much? Hey, they brought you in here. Hey.
I feel like the experience was a lot different than the experience I would have gotten in normal high school because the size of the school is particularly small. I was really able to get to know the faculty. I was really able to get a quality experience out of my academic programs. It was a lot more rigorous than the school I was originally designed for. It was like the only STEM school in Gwinnett County. And I feel like there was so much support there from the teachers that I wouldn't have gotten because of the large size of other high schools. I feel like also I was able to get a lot of leadership experience there, and I felt like the people were genuinely. Part of that also my internship that I'm doing with Mr. Gomez office in Gwinnett County, the ISC, and I'm here with Mr. McCluskey and Mr. Skip and everybody as a part of that. And I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not gone to.
What high school would you have gone to?
I would have went to Shiloh High School.
Shiloh, okay, very good. Well, we want to congratulate you and just let you know that this is part of our public charter schools, and we appreciate you. Let's give them a hand. Thank you so much for coming. All right, Margaret.
No, it's Kathy.
Kathy. They said, all right, Kathy.
You go first.
Margaret.
I just want to, with your permission, ask if we could find out exactly whose district he lives in. They can start planning.
Whose district do you live in? Your state. Who's your house district? Dixon. Okay. Dickerson. All right.
Mr. Chairman, another quick question. What kind of charter school is it? Was it commissioned by the local school board?
Yes, it's by Gwinnett County.
Yeah,
local school board.
Local
Thank
commission
you.
charter school. And I want y'all to know that school was started at Duluth High School, so we're proud of that. Yeah. This is your ammunition.
It was so soft. And Edward has his back to me.
I never have my back to you,
Just the top of your head's all I can see.
All right, Kathy, did you say what all you need to say? Okay. All right. We're glad to have you. Anyone else? It's your first time. Okay. If we could, he's ready now. I was waiting for him to get ready. Mike, you ready? We'd like to take up first House Bill 706. This bill was heard. We won't have any more discussion on it. You can ask, the committee can ask questions. This is our Title 20 bill. It was in rules, and we found a one-sentence error, and that was been corrected, so they felt it best to send it back to rules and back to the committee and get that corrected, then bring it back. Not everybody has a copy. Does everybody on the committee have a copy?
No, that's the problem. We're waiting on them.
We're waiting on them?
No, we had some copies handed out. Didn't we?
All right, give out what you have. All right, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, the current version we're offering is LC 334474S, committee substitute. As Brooks said, we took this committee to rule, and the very capable minority leader discovered, if you look at lines 43, 44, and 45 on page 2, those are the only changes in the bill. The original bill, all three of those lines were struck out where it was saying, the language saying that we were allowing the school board, the state school board, to have meetings in cities in places other than Atlanta. And the original bill struck out the entire line, no action of the state school board should be enforced unless such action is taken at a regular call meeting held in the state capitol. And basically, we were only wanting to get rid of the provision about the state capitol, but the accidental structure would actually say that the school board technically, I guess, can make a decision other than an open meeting. And all of our meetings structured in Georgia for local and other commissions are always done in open meetings. And we wanted, through the abundance of caution, to make sure that we put that language back in. So again, all we're looking at is basically unstrucking out 43 and 44, as you see there. That means that, again, all their decisions have to be made at a regular board meeting. It just does not have to be made in Atlanta. So I'd ask the committee do pass committee substitute here.
Any questions from the committee? All right, I have a motion from Kathy. A second? I have a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed? All right. This bill will move to rules and hopefully be out. If our senators are still here, you'll have that next week, we hope, senators. There's two pieces you have now. All right. All right. Next, we have on the agenda, if you're, I see, Jan, you're here, Representative, yes, she's here. Jones. All right. It's House Resolution 1162. Now, I would like to have the list, if you would, Abby, or if y'all could bring me the list of people who want to speak. I'm going to ask the author of the bill if she would come forward and present the bill, discuss it, talk about it, and then we will have where you need to know. I want to make you feel better right now. We're not going to vote on the bill today. I am not going to take a vote. I think we need to discuss it. That's okay with you, Representative Jones. I'd like to discuss it today, then we'll bring it back up for vote at another time pretty soon. But then I'd like to let people talk, and I will decide the amount of time when I have a chance to look at how many we have. It's all right. So, Representative Jones, if you would go ahead and if you would present the bill. Let's see if you're.
Right. There you go. This feels familiar. I was in this position 4 years ago. It's interesting being back. We're here today to talk about LC 334466EC.
If you would pull the mic right up to you, we're having trouble.
It's a constitutional amendment to clarify the Constitution to the point that Education Committee in the House, the Senate, education committees that preceded us have operated for the last 50 years, all of Title 20, to make it clear that the Georgia General Assembly may by general law provide for the establishment of education policies for such education. In addition, to make clear when this group and the state Senate education committees and the House floor, the Senate floor, when we approved 881 4 years ago, a number of you here voted for that, we would create an independent authorizer that could approve quality charter schools, hold them accountable for students and teachers throughout the state. A little background. Some of this you may remember from before. In 2007, the year preceding that bill that a number of you voted for, every single charter school, startup charter school application to every single school board in Georgia was denied. In 2008, the year we approved 881, 25 of 26 startup applications to local school boards were denied. There were 71 startups in 2008. In 2008, we held hearings. Many of you were here, joint Senate and House. We held a number of hearings, made a lot of changes to the legislation. Appreciated the input from those of you, others throughout the state. That year, Page and GAE did not oppose the bill. I believe I'm correct in saying GAE supported the bill. But we passed the bill. It passed 120 to 48 in the House. Passed in the Senate, was signed by the governor. 3 years later, in May of last year, the Supreme Court, although I may not agree with the Supreme Court, I accept the Supreme Court's decision. It is the highest law in the state other than the U.S. Supreme Court, voted in a tightly contested, it was the longest decision, 4-3, it was the longest they had taken in anyone's history to write this decision. It was a very close vote. They went back and forth, rendering 16 commissioned charter schools essentially homeless. So in that time period, only 16 had been approved, despite numerous applications. And I remember folks asking me, how many charter schools do you, Jan, want approved by the commissioned charter school, the commission? And I said, well, you know, it could be 0 or it could be many. I only want them to approve the very best, and I want them to close them down if they don't do a good job, and they certainly were doing that. In 11 last year, when the Supreme Court struck down the commission and that Act 881, only 2 startups were approved. In fact, since 2008, only 4 school boards out of 180 have approved a single charter startup application. It has been clear that this, if we want charter schools, that we need to go the route of 34 other states, both red majority and blue majority, and create an independent authorizer. And I looked carefully, and as did many of you who worked with me, as to how we should do that. I believe the route to go is not multiple authorizers. I think you get into problems when you have different folks authorizing the end. It should be one state authorizer. Going back to the decision, though, and I will read just 1 or 2 lines from it. It was pretty. I think it went broader than those who challenged the law ever expected. And I will read, because our Constitution, it says, the exclusive right to establish and maintain the exclusive control over general K-12 public education lies with the school boards. Local boards of education have the exclusive authority to fulfill one of the primary obligations of the state of Georgia, namely the provision of an adequate public education for its citizens. The word exclusive does not appear in the Constitution, but it has been interpreted by the Supreme Court that school boards have the exclusive authority to fulfill the provision of an adequate public education, which goes much further than simply charter schools. So what I sought to do in working with Wayne Allen and Betsy in Legislative Council, working with the governor, who I conferred with extensively, was to take the Constitution through an amendment back to where we all thought it, most of us, those of us, at least the 120 who voted for it, thought it was back in 2008. And that is, if you go to the first page of this, the first line that has changed, the General Assembly may by general law provide for the establishment of education policies for such public education. Down below, I clarify that the authority granted to boards of education does not diminish the authority otherwise granted in this article, including that. On page 2, I add the words that the General Assembly may define special schools, and then I make a listing of some of the types of special schools that we have. I do not believe that the special schools that we have today, I think they could be subject to being deemed unconstitutional. I would hope they wouldn't be if challenged. But in reading the Supreme Court decision, I think it certainly does call into question when you read what they believe would qualify as a special school. It's very narrow, and it had to perform functions, provide education, and to students that do not normally attend a traditional public school. And you know, the public schools that my children attend, you have children with every type and disability, and I think one could certainly make the case, whether that would be finally held to be true or not, that all of our special schools are unconstitutional. And then which may include but not be limited to adjustments proportion of state funds with respect to the affected local school systems. That's what we did in 881. I would like to make it clear to those of you who were not here in 2008 that proportion of state funds is not the same as using local funds. I'll give you a quick analogy or explanation. If a school system has 100 students and all 100 students for whatever reason chose to attend a state special school, that school system, local school system, would be left with 100% of their local property taxes to fund no children. Certainly they could roll back their property taxes if they wanted to, and the state, through QBE and federal funds, would 100% fund those students. But what it does do is it spreads it out so that areas are not disproportionately affected. And in fact, what I tried to do in working with legal counsel when I wrote it was more closely mimic how we fund students now. If you look at the state funding for a Brantley County School Board child, and you look at the funding for example, a Decatur, City of Decatur child, they are vastly different. It could be 2 or 3 times more for some school systems that the students receive, because we have always interpreted that it is the state's obligation to provide a financially adequate. And so when we include in that formula, the 5 mil share, we certainly are adjusting the proportion of state funds so that we are adequately funding the students. And that's what the mechanism was in 881. And then there's a question you can see there: shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended for the purpose of raising student achievement by allowing state and local approval of public charter schools upon the request of local communities? I have worked with a number of folks, and certainly since I introduced this rough draft, it was at the request and input of Representative Morgan and Representative Kaiser that I do not want to vote, because I don't think this is a final product. I'm open. They've offered some excellent suggestions, and I do intend to introduce enabling legislation next week, quite similar with some of their suggestions for changes similar to 881. I'd be happy to take questions.
All right, at this time we're going to take questions from the committee. So, and senators, we'd like to invite, we'll show you we don't discriminate. We'll allow you to ask questions if you'd like to. We just appreciate you staying. So if you would, if you have a question, the little button by your mic there, Mash, it'll come on if anybody has a question or comment. And I'd like you to, all right. Anyone? I see none, so no one has a question.
Thank you very much.
If you wouldn't mind staying there, because I'm going to have the people, I have signed up 10 people in order to be fair. I'm not going to take them I'm going to try to do, just randomly select them, and you have 2.5 to 3 minutes. I have my timer here who will be keeping time. After each presenter, I'll see if there's a question from this group, and I'll give the author a chance to comment if you would like. So if we could, I'd like to start off first. And I'm having a hard time this lab, but it's Elizabeth Hartley. Elizabeth, where are you? If you're first. Come on, I think I got it right. Then come on up there to the mic. And tell us who you are, who you represent, speaking for yourself or a group or what.
Yes. I just found out that I have maximum 3 minutes, so please bear with me. I'm a public school educator in leadership for 35 years. I'm retired now.
Where were you teacher?
I was the instructional lead teacher at Farrington Elementary. My principal was the former associate superintendent of instruction for DeKalb County, Dr. Philip.
Okay, DeKalb County, okay.
Dr. Philip Bradley.
Speaking for yourself or for a group?
I am speaking for myself.
Okay.
I'm an independent person, but I am a member of GAE.
All right.
All right. My name is Elizabeth Hartley, to give my dad credit, who was an educator, Filliot, Filliat.
Good.
All right. I do not support Representative Jones's bill. I want to give you some reasons why. I want to read this, though, that from my information from GAE, but I am not a lobbyist for GAE. I'm an independent agent. This bill might alter the Constitution and allow private companies that operate charter schools to siphon local tax dollars without accountability or oversight, without academic standards, and without educator criteria currently in place in traditional public systems. I want to see Georgia become one of the best recognized, best in this nation. I was a international, national corporations Teacher of the Year. They granted me a grant when I was named that to establish a dual textbook for children who were on 9th grade level, who are reading on 4th grade level. I have a master's as a reading specialist. I'm a CCNY graduate of English. I taught public schools for 30 years and sub 5 years thereafter. As an instructional lead teacher at Farrington, I monitored 900 students yearly for about 10 years who were extremely varied within their instructional levels on every grade level. Yet we teach curriculum in lockstep curriculum, and children will always be varied because IQ and many other things are varied. It's called mastery learning. You have to target individualized instruction to where individuals are functioning for success. That's why Georgia has been recognized throughout this nation for excellence in standards with Race to the Top, but they aren't getting the results because people like myself can't share to people who make a difference. Now, when I was in high school, after 10 years there, monitoring all these children yearly, I was the reading department chair and also the chair for the student support team with children with special disabilities, with, as Ms. Jones, Representative Jones was just alluding. Now, there, I designed testing on the Nelson Reading Test. All incoming 9th grade students, about 600 a year, as well as through 11th grade, we tested, but taking that body, just so you know, those children were reading on from 3rd grade level to grade level 16 plus. Just take that in a minute now. We've got 600 9th graders reading on that range, with half of them on 6th grade level or below. If individualized instruction is not addressed, Georgia will never pull up. You can't dismantle public schools. This bill is a political maneuver to dismantle public schools. Let's have charter schools, have them connected to the local school board, and let me just finish this sentence.
Right,
this is the heart of it. Let those charter schools that are local board designated develop innovative approaches to individualized instruction, feed them over to the public schools, and serve the masses of children in Georgia that are reading on 3rd and 4th that will never be able to attend a private with vouchers because their parents can't afford it or the transportation, and you'll depend on public education. So we have another segregated Georgia, but this time by class and by wealth and not by race. I saw segregation. It's ugly spiritually and morally, and it won't be effective for education. I wish I could speak more because I have a lot more to say.
Well, you can. If you would just contact Ms. Representative Jones, we'd be glad to have you come in, sit down with her at any time and talk, I guarantee you. So, all right, just stay there just a second. I have a question for you. No question? All right, anyone else have a question? All right, he waves. All right. Next, I would like, what we're going to let you know, Amy will, Representative Carter will just wave. That means you have 30 seconds where we won't catch you off guard. All right, next, Tony Roberts. Oh, Jan, do you have anything you want to say? All right, Tony Roberts will be next. Then after Tony Roberts, I will be calling on Angela Palm. Well, you know where you're coming. All right.
Thank you, Chairman Coleman and members of the House Education Committee for allowing me this few moments to come and speak. Tony Roberts, I'm the president of the Georgia Charter Schools Association, so I am here representing the charter schools of our state and the thousands of students that they serve. So as not to be repetitive of what Representative Jones has said, we all do recognize that there was a reason that HB 881 was created. and that was the difficulty, in fact, almost impossibility of getting local school districts to approve charters on the local level. And what I'm here to say to you is I would like to say that's all changed now, but it's not. In fact, our pipeline has come to a drip again. When we had 881 passed, the first year, there were 250 letters of intent turned into the Department of Education saying we're interested in looking into where we need charter schools and we're going to write petitions and do it. Now, not that many people applied, but that many letters of intention. And normally we have 60 to 80 schools that actually move beyond the letter of intention to get in the pipeline. By the pipeline, I mean they've done the letter of intention and they're actively known by the Department of Education to be working on a petition to open a school somewhere. Now we've got, and I'm talking, when I say charters, there's a lot of confusion. I'm talking about the startup charter schools, the independent startup charter schools. I'm not talking about systems charters. I'm not talking about conversion charters or any others. Now we have 4 to 6 charter schools in the pipeline right now. And that tells you something. It tells you, number one, that those who at one time thought they had a good shot at getting a good hearing before a school district think now they can't do it. What gave them hope before was there was an alternative. And as you remember, 881 had, I thought, a wonderful provision. You didn't go straight to the commission. You went to the school district. And only if the school district was not agreeable could you then go on to the commission and you could make your case and the commission would either approve or deny. And I want to remind everyone that there was this big outcry saying the commission's just going to approve everything that moves for that. Yes? 30 seconds? Yeah. All right. Performance of charter schools in APS, which, by the way, is a wonderful authorizer. You just saw the article in the Atlanta Journal that 10%, the students, where 10% of the students are charter school students in startup charters, performed better than the other students in NAEP, and we know the CRCT. So the problem is not solved. We believe that startup charters are best approved in the local school districts, but they're not. So we need help.
Stay there because we have some questions for you. All right. Representative Morgan, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
To the presenter?
To either one who can answer this. And thank you, Representative Jones and Mr. Roberts. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. Just a couple of questions, and I'll just say both of them so that you can answer them. From a national perspective, since you do this work every day, how many other states have alternate authorizers?
32.
32 other states.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I assume that that's spread across the country and politically it's diverse as well?
It is.
And then my second question is about the data. And while I recognize that this particular resolution is not about whether or not we need charter schools, we understand that's not the question.
Correct.
But in talking to some of my colleagues, I think there's a little bit of misinformation about how well charters are doing in Georgia. So would you talk about the comparison data in terms of student achievement of charters that are in Georgia and how they rate overall?
I will, and I'll have to be general because you know, what would be best, and I've actually been asked for this today, is if we could provide a list and show every charter school and then show the nearest non-charter school and are they doing better or not. In some cases, we can do that. In other cases, you have to go back to earlier. In APS, about 10% of the students are in charter schools, startup charter schools. There, we can make very good comparisons. But in the rest of the state, I wonder how many know, only 1% of the student population are in startup charter schools. So you don't have a lot of data statewide. We've got pockets of charter schools so that we can do that. Now, overall, on the CRCT exams, charter schools do very well and often exceed so-called the district average. Now, that's not to say that's our goal. Our goal is, as the last speaker said, to try to be a laboratory of innovation and to try things that are new, innovative, or different, and then absolutely share those with other schools in the district. And to their credit, I say APS has taken full advantage of that. This is why they're active in looking for great petitions for charter schools, and they approve a couple or three every year. They actually do that as a part of their plan. How can we improve our district? And I wish it were that way everywhere.
Let me say this, because we got a lot. We've got to vacate this room at 5 till 3. Please, everybody speak in sentences and not in paragraphs. That'll help us out. Okay, number 15, you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Stay there. You're
Mr. Robert.
I'm sorry.
Quick question for you. I wanted to follow up on something you said about the Charter School Commission was in operation. They did not just approve everything, and they actually were very selective. And do you have some statistics how many schools they did approve while they're in operation? And
they approved 16 schools, and they seriously considered 56 applications.
Exactly.
So they only approved 16 schools in 2 years total.
Very good. All right, next it was on 2. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you speak to the emphasis within the Obama administration for charter schools and how the alternate authorizer law that we passed was, how important that was in our race to top application in making the appeal to the Obama administration that we were truly about meaningful change in Georgia, and how important that was, not just that we had some charter schools, but that the alternate authorizer potential was present in Georgia.
It was extremely important. If you remember, and I'm sure all of you read that application every night, about 20 pages of our Race to the Top application was concerning how much we had grown in our charter sector and how we were operating in the charter sector here in Georgia. And we touted the fact that we had an alternate authorizer now, because that's known by organizations like the National Association of Charter School Authorizers to be a mark of good standards in practice. So we said that we were, and in fact, our rating of charter school laws achieved the 4th best in the nation by the National Association of Public Charter Schools. And after we removed our alternate authorizer, we've now gone down to 14th, which doesn't sound too bad, but it's a pretty good plunge. We would not have gotten our Race to the Top grant, in my opinion, if the state had not demonstrated this kind of reform measure. I'm not saying it was all up to the charter schools, but that was a major part, because the Obama administration said, if you don't have charter schools and you don't have good charter school laws, then you're not eligible for these grants.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a native Atlantan who started his education in a segregated Atlanta public schools and graduated at a fully integrated Atlanta public school, I'm troubled by the allegation of resegregation. And I think perhaps it would be illuminating to a lot of people who've heard that allegation that you sort of explain those 17 charter schools in the city of Atlanta, where are they primarily located and who they're primarily helping?
Most of the charter schools in our state serve those with less than the best economic circumstances. That is, they're eligible for free and reduced lunches. The greatest percentage are. And the greatest percent, more than 50%, are serving people of minority origin. There's always this misperception that the charter schools are pulling all the cream of the crop out of the schools and this, but the exact opposite is true when I'm talking about academically. The charter schools are attracting people who have not found their own success in the school where they are. And that happens very often in schools that are not doing well. So these neighborhoods happen to be in areas of high minority origin.
Right. If I could just remind you, please, if just keep them. I know you want to say a lot.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, because we got a lot of people. Number 6, that's Reverend Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious, do you know if we are able to track individual performance of students yet? I know we talked about that coming online. Are we at that point yet?
The state is able to, but we are not made privy to that information because of privacy issues.
Okay.
If the state gets to the point where they can put that information out without personal identifiers for children, we would love nothing more than to do that.
Yeah, it seems like that's a better way of evaluating the efficacy of a charter school generally. Not that the existence of charter schools is at issue here, but
Right.
but you know, it would mean a lot more to say that these children perform this much better in this environment rather than the school perform better than nearby schools, because
That's right.
You know, because we're really talking about individual performance, I think. So just to
I agree.
Thank you.
All right. Number 14, last question. All right, 14. She waves. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it.
Sorry, I'm so wordy.
No, that's okay. Just remember, stay in sentences and not too many paragraphs. We're okay. I appreciate it. But I know it's important. All right, next, to follow Angela, we will have the next speaker will be Rich Thompson, where you'll be ready. 100 dads. Where's the Rich? All right.
Good afternoon. I will try to do this in 3 minutes. Like Representative Jones feels like we were just here talking about this. There's a lot of research on
Identify
charters.
yourself so everybody knows in the audience who you represent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Angela Palm, Georgia School Boards Association. There's a lot of research on charter schools, and I'll just say that it's mixed. There are, just like every group of schools or any other organization, there are truly outstanding, stellar ones, and there are mediocre, and there are some that need some work. So I don't think that that's really going to get us very far. If you have not read Chester Finn's book, Lessons Learned, if you're interested in charters, I think that's an interesting book to read. Chester Finn is kind of an education historian, been around a long time doing education policy, heads up the Fordham Foundation, very pro-choice, so I'm not pulling somebody from one side or the other. But as an authorizer, they found that some of the things they thought going in were not true. Parents voting with their feet and walking away from a non-performing charter turned out not to be true. Being able to close down a charter that wasn't performing turned out not to be so easy. What he thought going in with his group being a charter authorizer and being able to fix things and set it up so that it worked up right turned out not to be so easy and not to be correct. And so 10 years after they started in the process, he wrote a book about the lessons that they had learned, and I think that is very helpful. We come in a different perspective, and I think that's what happens a lot when we talk about local charters versus state charters or an independent authorizer. For some people, choice is the most, just giving more choice. However, when a local board is looking at a petition that has been brought before it, they have to balance all the needs in the district. And they have to look at it in the context of all the students and all the programs that they already offer. So there's a difference of opinion there. There's also a differing philosophy. For some people, there again, if parents come to the board and say they want something in particular, whether it's a program, school, or whatever, then they should be listened to. However, the boards are very well aware that only about 30% of households in Georgia have school-age children. So they're responsible to a lot more people than the parents of any given school at any given time. Okay, and so that's important. This amendment would do two things. It allows the creation of a parallel school system of public schools. I've heard that they don't care if any are ever approved, if just a small number are approved, but I think we do care if some are approved since we're here trying to get something going. And we do have local charter schools, by the way, that have been approved by the boards. The other thing is the funding issue. And I agree that they do end up with 100% of the local funds. What I don't agree with is that that's it, because there is an impact on the state funds. When the state funds are subtracted from the students in the school district, then that puts more pressure. Either the school board is forced to reduce the offerings to the students in their own school district, or they have to raise more taxes.
All right. If you'll remain there, Ms. Palm, we have several questions. All right. Number 3, this is the order your lights came on.
I'll wait.
You wave, all right. Number 4, you wave. Okay. Representative Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Ms. Palm.
Hello.
Just 2 quick questions. The book that you referenced, did that include Georgia-specific information?
No, it was all Ohio.
Okay. The second question is, could you speak to the number of charter schools that have been authorized by districts? You clearly spend a lot of time communicating with districts. I've seen some of the communications that go out. Help me understand why in 2007 not one, when in just as an example, one of the best that's ever been submitted was denied that particular year, and then after that only 4 in the entire state. Help me understand from a district perspective why that has happened.
In 2007, there were a lot of them that seemed to be held up in it. And I won't dispute the fact that there were 25 that were turned down for various reasons. And I don't know about the best one in the state being turned down that year. But in the following years, in the annual report that the department does on charter schools, it noted that the largest number of schools ever had been approved. And as for only 4 districts out of 180 approving them, I would ask how many districts received one. Because the metro districts, it's fairly common for them to get a charter petition. But once you get out of the metro area, it's not so common. The commission, when it was in existence, pushed hard to get petitioners to go outside the metro area, and were trying very hard to get them to go. But I don't know how many districts actually got one, so I don't know how bad it is that only 4 approved it. But I would say, again, that that's local control, and if the local community is upset with the board about their decision in that, I always encourage them to let their boards know that, and they can run for office, they can vote against them.
24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You represent school boards. How many school boards are there in the state?
There are 180 elected school boards.
And they are all elected by
They are all elected by the people in the district. Some are elected at large, some are elected by district.
So in most elections, if you don't like the way things are being run, what is the alternative there?
The alternative is to run for office yourself, find somebody to run for office, or simply vote against whoever's in.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next one was 23. Representative Nix.
Yes, thank you. You said that you can't get a bad charter school shut down. If we have a regular school that children are assigned to and it's not performing very well, how easy is it to shut it down?
Well, actually, there's state laws that deal with reorganizing it or doing those. I know what you're getting at there. And what I said was that one of the lessons learned that Chester Finn talked about in his book was that it wasn't as easy to do it. I didn't say you couldn't do it, because you can.
All right, 17. Who's that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to really ask you a question. This is incredibly important public policy. We're giving people 3 minutes. I think some of them have much longer prepared comments.
And what I said,
we ask them to please submit those in writing.
I think it's good. Yeah, I'm glad you said, because what I was going to say is at the end, I was going to say, give us your comments in writing, and I will see that we get to use them. And also, I'm encouraging, and I have said this to, in my opening statement to our Speaker Pro Tem, if she would, she'll have some time to hear these people, have them come in and meet with her and with us. I agree with you, in writing.
It's too important.
And I was going to ask for that at the end.
3 minute snippet.
But since it's already been mentioned, please give us all this in writing. I was going to make those suggestions. That's and give them to either Abby, hold up your hand, Abby, or Courtney. Where are you, Courtney? Give them to one of them, and we'll see that there's getting. All right, I have 19. I have 3 questions, and that's all I'm taking on this one. I'm going to have to limit these a little bit. All right, 19. That is. Where's my 9? Oh, right here. All right, Barbara, Representative Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that I support charter schools when they are approved by local boards, and my problem just relates right back to local control. You mentioned that there is a cost to local systems without the funding that they've been able to receive prior, that they might have to restrict course offerings. They certainly might have to use larger classroom sizes, things like that. Right now in my home county, we have 2 new schools, or 1 new high school and another school being combined with new buildings being built. What problems could a state authorization entity be to a local board when they are responsible for planning for the education of the children for years down the road? We do short-term and long-term planning. Would this not be a problem to adequately provide education for children under the school board's authority?
It could, in that the independent authorizer would be receiving the petition separately. It depends on how Representative Jones does the enabling legislation. If it is the way 881 was, then they would have to go to the local board first, so the local board would at least be on notice that they would be creating or possibly establishing a school there, so they would know that much. I always try to be fair, sometimes to my detriment. But I would say that when you're building a new school, yes, you're planning for circumstances, but stuff happens. And I think that a change with somebody else coming in with a school would be no different than if a private school decided to open. So I understand that there would be some angst around that, and while part of me wants to just grab onto that and play on that, I can't do it, because I think that, in all honesty, that anything could decide to open there and it would have the same effect as this, that there would simply be another offering.
Okay.
So there would
we only have, I'm going to take two more, could I have two more. All right, Representative Setzler and then Representative, I have you down, yeah. Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Palm, again, appreciate you being here today. I want to ask you, for example, and get your perspective on what someone ought to do in a specific circumstance with respect to having their kids served. Appreciate the passionate exhortation about individualizing education and taking care of kids. I've got a single mom who lives down the street from me. She has 5 kids. Her husband left her a couple of years ago, high and dry, and she is raising 5 kids by herself. She's sometimes getting some child support, working 2 jobs to kind of keep things going for herself. If she came to see where I live, and if she came to find that the school in our area is not serving her kids' individualized needs, and that, hypothetically, and that the school board wasn't making the leadership changes necessary, that the principal wasn't listening, that she couldn't get action, meaningful action in the life of her first grader for the kind of education her child needed. Following the line of logic that she ought to run for office and fix it, she's a single mom, has a high school degree, not particularly, among the skills she has, she's not particularly skilled.
Let's ask a question quickly, because we got a lot more.
I don't know that she could win political office. The office comes up in 2014, and if she were to win, there's 6 other board positions in Cobb County that it would take to get a majority. She would have to orchestrate victories in other school board posts in Cobb County, then to begin able to get the pressure on her school to change the environment, to change the leaders, to change the instruction so that her first grader can get served. How many years would it take this woman to make that happen in reality? And can she, is it effectual for her to take a political approach to solving her first grader's fixing these instructional needs, or is really the only way for her to solve this problem for her child finding another environment for them?
All right.
I would ask you, Representative Setzler, are you able to satisfy every constituent that comes to you and wants something?
I'm not.
There's the local board, and neither is the head of a school.
And it's precisely to that point that I think parents ought to be able to exercise choice, that the school board cannot serve every child, and to suggest that we're going to pin children and parents into a situation where they can exercise no choice, I think is frankly immoral.
All right, let's go to number 3.
Yeah, let me get back to specifics. You referenced the book, and I appreciate the fact that you referenced that book. I now recall the book now that I've been reminded that it was Ohio. You recall, and you sat through those hearings in 2007 when we looked at that. As a matter of fact, the book that you referenced Ohio in terms of that was the study, right? You'll also recall that in Ohio, they had what's called multiple authorizers.
Yes.
In which it wasn't just simply the local school board and then the state acting as an appellate board, but rather multiple authorizers throughout the entire state. That's exactly the sort of scenario that we specifically rejected here in Georgia for many of the reasons that you illuminated. We went for, when we looked through this process, did we not? We looked at sort of a Goldilocks approach. Georgia was too restrictive, and we specifically cited Ohio as being too broad. So the book that you cited in terms of the difficulties and problems with charter schools is exactly the scenario that we chose and rejected in 2008. Isn't that true?
Sort of.
Yes. We did.
The book itself is about the experience of the Fordham Foundation as an authorizer.
That's right. As a multiple authorizer.
It doesn't. No. As an individual authorizer.
Yes. And they were one of the multiple authorizers.
They were one of the multiple ones, but it was not about the experience of the state. There's another book that deals with that. But this one deals with their experience.
My point being that the book that you referenced in terms of the failures of charter schools dealt with a scenario that Georgia specifically rejected.
Okay.
We'll
All right, number 14. Margaret, Representative Kaiser.
Hey, Ms. Palm, you and I share the same.
This is the last question.
You and I share the same characteristic of being too fair to our detriment. So I feel compelled to ask this question, and it's not just for you; it's for the others that follow you that feel compelled to answer it. I just want to know, and this goes a little to what Representative Setzler said. My children have been in charter school since kindergarten. It's a startup charter school at the local level. We didn't have schools of choice at that time, so what was happening in my community were parents were either leaving or the dollars that would have stayed in the local system were going to private schools. And it wasn't until we were able to open a charter school that burned down 8 months later when I was board chair-elect, and we were told we didn't have enough insurance to rebuild the building. Mm-hmm. So what concerns me is that we've already created a system where there are parents who can't afford private school or can't afford other options. You already have a somewhat adversarial relationship. I understand that systems are granting charter petitions. But I will tell you there's nobody, whether it's a for-profit company that has to put up their own dollars or a startup school like mine where it's parents' hard work, there's nobody that's going to bring a petition because they just want just a school, because it is a lot of work. They bring a petition forth because they want an alternative education for their children. And it concerns me when we say, well, then you should, that's why I ran for office. That's why I'm in this seat. It concerns me when we say, and I get very passionate, because how many out there really can go run for office? And how long does that take to affect change? So